So this video is going to be the RC21 guide for Ice Rift that I mentioned because there's a couple changes you can do once you hit RC21. And unfortunately, I didn't get to hit a true one-shot. I was limiting my gears by a lot though. Maybe with some optimized setups and much better gear, you could go for a one-shot. But since this is mostly new player aimed anyways, if I can't do it with this relatively like mid-game gear, then there's not really any point. You can see though that Elena is gone and we are using Brieg. So let's explain that. In the Rift controllers, we're using the attack one, the warrior greater attack buff, warrior in the back row healing after damage is dealt, and this healing is actually enough to completely sustain the team by itself. The reason we couldn't do this until RC21 is because there's still the unhealable that we have to worry about, but at RC21, we get immunity to all allies at the start of battle. So this just means that our cleanse is covered, and our sustain is covered, and Elena is completely useless. So we'll swap her out for any sort of tank in the front line instead. And I'll also go over all the stuff that I tested, and my thoughts to anybody who wants to try and improve this team potentially. So this team is pretty much a near 100% consistent two-shot. It's definitely 100% consistent with better gear. The odds of me missing Deathbreak are actually so low that I can't be bothered to check if it's actually 100% because I'd be waiting for a while. So, we have Brieg as our frontline, replacing Elena. Some other units you could work with is, I think, Shu is an option. You could maybe just run a base speed Shu here and just have her on counter set, completely base speed. She also gets Elbrus after using S3, and she could add some counters. When I tried her, it was about the same damage as the Brieg team. Provided that Chloe lands the same amount of death breaks, it was about the same amount of damage. Which is kind of surprising since Brieg has his extra turn and everything, but yeah, it kind of doesn't matter. So I'm opting to use Brieg here because then you can, this is my Expedition Brieg, I didn't re-gear him or anything. So you can kind of use the same Brieg here and it would be fine. But Shu is another option, of course. Some other options, I mean, Brieg is free, so I'll use him as the minimum, I guess. So really, I think it's just Brieg or Shu. Because Shu also benefits from the greater attack buff while she is an HP scaler. It's still a greater attack buff, and she does help with removing the arc effects. And of course, there was also people who didn't have Chloe. So for Chloe replacements, there's a lot of units, really. I mean, Luna, if you have her built for some reason, you could use her. You could also really... I tried a run with Shu here in this slot, and it was okay. So it's like Shu, Luna... And then, who else is there? Luluka probably works okay. I would say Shu and Luna are probably the best ones just because they actually get the greater attack buff. So we can take a look at everyone's stats that I'm using. We'll do Brieg last. Let's start off with Sigret. So for Sigret, it's just full DPS gear, and I have her at this speed for a tuning thing later. But you do want her decently fast because even though our healing and our cleanse is completely covered, if you don't go fast enough, the boss just kind of loses its debuffs. So it's just a normal speed DPS build, and you can see her gear here. I would say all of this is pretty like mid, except for probably this and probably this. This neck is actually pretty good. 92 is deceiving because it's got a flat attack roll, so this is basically 96. And then this, the F-res roll is useless, though this stat would always be worthless anyways, so this is basically a maxed out pink here. So probably these two are like the only ones I would say actually hard. Everything else is kind of like whatever. So I was limiting my gear a lot for the testing. For her EE, I can see it from here. Her EE is the S1 damage one. And then for her artifact, just any sort of damage boosting artifact works fine. You have this, you have Shortcake, you have Symbol, anything. So then, next up, there is Alexa. For Alexa, same thing as Sigret. They're both aiming for the exact same stats pretty much. You don't have to worry about sustain anymore at this point, nor bulk, because you have the cleanse. The unhealable and the burns were really what was doing a lot of damage, so sustain is not an issue anymore. You do still want Alexa's basket, of course, and we can see her actual gear pieces here. Like, this bulk is completely useless. So pretty much none of this is anything too hard to get. The boots are pretty good. I keep on forgetting to check for flat attack rolls. The boots are pretty good. The rest is kind of whatever. And then next up is Chloe. Chloe, oh, I didn't give her an artifact. Well, okay, I'm going to give her an artifact and then redo the run, I suppose. But here is Chloe, and she's much faster than the other two because I want her cycling for her Death Break. So she is also just speed DPS, and you can see the pieces here. So she is using a bit better gear than the other ones. I would say these three are pretty good, and then the rest is kind of whatever. Oh, well, that's 78. That's crazy. So yeah, same thing. And then her S3 is the defense break EE. Also any sort of damage boosting artifact. And lastly is Brieg. This is literally just my Expedition Brieg that I always use. I didn't bother re-gearing him. I can show his gear. It's pretty high-end for some of it. Though no one else really uses HP Bruiser gear for DPS, or for speed set rather, so not really a huge loss, but this is just my normal Expedition Brieg. And I suppose I should redo the run, since I forgot to give Chloe an artifact, though the other run I had was one where I missed Death Break at the very start and landed the second one, so I'll talk a bit about Death Break chances, and also show the damage that I deal in runs where I land Death Break at different points. Depending on your gear level, there's going to be a variety of different conditions for you to two-shot. I think my team actually has enough damage to 100% two-shot, where even if I don't land any Death Breaks, I'd still be able to one-shot. This is the damage I dealt after Chloe missed her initial Death Break and then landed her second one. And this is also damage dealt without Chloe having an artifact, because I forgot to give her an artifact for this run. So it would be a little bit more damage than this. And comparing that to this run, which is the damage I dealt when I landed both Death Breaks, one before at the very start of the fight and then after the boss uses S3, especially considering that I wasn't using an artifact in this run, it's like less than a bar of damage probably, or around 1 bar of damage from landing the Death Break. So with that in mind, I'd assume that if I miss both Death Breaks, or all 3 Death Breaks rather, I'd still have a chance to, or I'd still just do more than half the boss's HP, which is 100% one-shot. The 3 Death Break chances I mentioned is because this team is tuned so that it goes Chloe at the start, and then after the boss uses S3, Chloe goes again. The boss still has 1 turn of Magic Nail on it already, and she immediately S3s and Death Breaks it. And also, since the arcs have been removed so much at that point, Brieg can use his S3 again, and has a chance to apply Death Break even with just his base effectiveness. So that's 85% chances. Of course, you might not be tuned for it, and then you would just have Chloe at the start, and then Brieg after the boss uses S3. So I have enough damage to just 100% two-shot it. If you don't, you either need to land Death Break in one of your 2 runs at any point, because like I said, this is the damage with just 1 Death Break. I missed the first one, landed the second one, and this is more than half. So if you do this, then you would have enough damage to with all of your Death Breaks in your second run and still be able to clear. So that could be 1 in 6 if you're tuned for it, or 1 in 4 if you're not. And then if your damage is really low, then you either have to land, well, you'd have to land Death Break in both of your runs, and then that's either 1 out of 3 Death Breaks in 2 runs, or 1 out of 2 Death Breaks in 2 runs. So now here's the odds of landing Death Breaks across different gear levels. The first one is the one I mentioned, where if you only need to land 1 Death Break at any point across either of your runs, then you have a 99.99886% chance. Normally I round this more, but it was a pretty high number, so I wanted to make it a bit more precise this time. This is your odds of landing at least 1 Death Break out of your 6 attempts. Now let's say you're not tuned for it like I am, and you only get 2 attempts, so 1 out of 4 is still 99.95% chance. This is if you are tuned for it, but your damage isn't good enough. I don't even know if that's possible, but just in case, 99.326% is your odds of landing Death Break in both your first run and your second run at some point. And if you, I forgot to mention this, if you land Death Break at both points in your first run, that would reduce the requirements on your second run and potentially make it so you don't actually need to land Death Break on that second run. I'm not going to bother calculating that. And then this is just if you have to land Death Break in both of your runs and you only have 2 attempts, it's 95.55%.
때가 되었다. 주제 모르는 자의 자만에 가소를 부린다.
그 목표를 위해 어둠 속으로 사라지시죠.
진심을 다해야 이겠지. 무의미한 가락을 거듭할 수 네 가치를 삼킬 뿐이다.
사라져 주십시오. 방해는 제거한다.
정령왕의 힘을 켜!
And that's it for the team. It's definitely pretty consistent for a 2-shot. A bit unfortunate that you can't 1-shot it. If you are interested, there is the $10 pack for Fenne, but it's really up to you whether or not you think that is worth buying. And yeah, that's it. They did announce the new Rift, which surely I would hope that one's a little bit better of a middle ground between Ice Rift and Earth Rift, because Ice Rift was too easy for people who had the unit, since it's evolved into Fenne soloing as early as RC2. But then for people who didn't have Fenne, it's worse than Earth Rift, because Earth Rift with Bologna, Vivian, Ray, and Adin, you had a 97.75% consistent one-shot team at RC21, and this team is just 100% two-shot instead. But yeah, we'll see how that goes.